What's up, viewer? Just checking my fantasy sports here. Chatting about things is the topic, which is pretty vague. Could be anything. I will say that I was watching the Olympics last night pretty late after the Super Bowl. And the 15-year-old skater, Kamila Valetijic or something, she's going to skate on Tuesday. And the American commentators were not very happy about that because she got a positive doping result for some heart medication. I don't know. The whole Olympics could be tainted. Not really, but I mean, she's the gold favorite in the women's singles. And then also last night at the Olympics, if you weren't up to watch it, the monobob, U.S. took gold and silver. It's pretty cool. The person who took gold used to be a Canadian citizen and switched her citizenship to America. So I don't know what's on for the Olympics tonight. Like I said, the women's single figure skating is on Tuesday. So I don't know. But yeah, that's the major Olympic news. Obviously, last night the Rams won the Super Bowl, which they were supposed to win the Super Bowl, and I was rooting for the Bengals, to be honest. But then again, I mean, my team wasn't in it, so I didn't really care either way. I mean, it was close. The Rams scored that touchdown with like a little less than 2 minutes to go, and Bengals only needed a field goal to tie it, but couldn't pull it off. Just kind of sad, because the Bengals were definitely like the big underdog story. I think they're at the beginning of the season, their odds to win the Super Bowl were like 1 in 200 or something, which is pretty far pretty long odds. So that was yesterday's major events. Today it doesn't seem like much is going on. I don't know. Lately, my thing that I've been thinking about, I want to get into like antique dealerships, like or collectible, like dealing in collectibles and antiques. My dad wasn't like super supportive of it, but so that's kind of bummed me out recently. I just told him about my idea, but he wasn't like super happy about it. Not that it matters; it's my life, and I can do what I want. But I just think it'd be a fun way to make money. I mean, like collecting like stamps and coins and military artifacts. And I mean, the field I would want to focus on is like economic and military artifacts. So whether that means like different swords and knives and guns, or like I said, coins or banknotes, or different bank documents, or economic also includes like equipment, like different industrial and farming equipment, different construction equipment. I don't know. I mean, I just think like if you know what you're looking at, because my plan, frankly, which I didn't tell my dad because he definitely would be against this, is to get like a graduate degree in history, American history, so I could study American history and, have a good idea about like how the different artifacts relate to history. And, hopefully pick up some cool stuff. I mean, there is a lot of overhead. That's what my dad was trying to explain, which I have an accounting undergraduate degree. I understand the concept of overhead. Just in storage alone, obviously, if you have to get, depending on how much stuff you have, the storage overhead can get pretty costly. And then obviously, bringing the different stuff to market, I don't know, like Shopify, Amazon, eBay, I think they all have various fees to open up stores, and then you have to include, some allotment for marketing. I live in a state where in the summertime, especially, we do a lot of like flea market type stuff. So you can do like, you can rent a stall and set up, your wares and try to sell them. But again, that all costs money. I don't know. Obviously, I'd have to research. But the thing about it is like, I think you can start very small in terms of, if I focus on small items like, coins and stamps and handheld tools and, small military artifacts. And, as long as I don't go too crazy with buying, I should be able to store most of that in my apartment. And then, I don't know. On eBay, I think if you don't want to set up a store, I think you can, auction stuff off on eBay, just based on a commission rate. So again, I think you can do it for very low overhead, and then obviously as far as selling stuff, there's like Facebook Marketplace, which is free, I think. There's Craigslist. So what I'm saying is like, yes, obviously as it scales up, the overhead gets pretty extreme. But if I just started as like a small hobby, I can probably operate with very low overhead. And, just because my thought on it is that, especially if I studied history, and I already have quite a bit of hospitality working experience, customer service, in the summertime especially, I could probably find a job as like an antique shopkeeper's assistant and try to like apprentice under somebody who, does this at scale and for a living. while having my sort of side hustle of my own, buying and selling on the side. I don't know. Like I said, when I told my dad about it, he didn't seem too enthused. He was like, "Yeah, you need a lot of capital," so, which I don't agree with necessarily. I mean, yes, I agree that if you're going to try to jump right in and make, you know, a really going concern, yeah, you need a lot of capital because obviously, if you were going to buy inventory to fill a whole shop, and then have the overhead of a shop and, marketing, yeah, and then you're looking at, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars of upfront cost. But if you're just going to slowly start accumulating, small ticket items with the idea of, selling them through eBay or through, free marketplace um, sales sites, I don't think again, as long as you can store them in your apartment, and you sell them in places that are either free or only charge you a percentage of the sale, I mean, again, you obviously need the capital to buy the inventory. But again, you could buy, a lot of coins and stamps and, um, you know, small farming equipment. I mean, you can buy a lot of that stuff for, $5 to $20. Well, or sometimes you can buy a lot for, 20 and under. So for $1,000, you can get like, you know, 50 to 100 items to start a small inventory. But obviously, the risk is like when you first start out, because you don't have a lot of knowledge or experience from the business perspective or from the, history and knowledge perspective of, what's really worth money and what's not. Yeah, I mean, it's probably like going to be difficult to find good deals. And then, I mean, it's like obviously a lot of people are involved in this, and but the thing is like from a business perspective, antiques and collectibles from for economic and military antiques and collectibles, and it's differentiated enough to where, it's a it's a niche market where, it's not like drop shipping or I guess what I'm trying to say is there is some differentiation in the business, and in theory, you're competing against a smaller subsection of businesses, but still, I mean, that smaller subsection on a national level could still be thousands or tens of thousands of various enterprising individuals or businesses trying to do that. In the state that I live in, that number's smaller, and I have an advantage in the state I live in where we have a huge influx of tourists who come every summer, to visit, especially on the coast, in the coastal regions. And, tourists typically have a certain allotment of money that they're willing to spend on, various tourist artifacts. And, and I mean, again, I would focus on, economic and military artifacts from my region, because obviously I'm going to be buying almost exclusively in the region that I live in. And, so if somebody comes on a tourist from out of state or international, they might think, well, this is kind of a cool thing to, buy as a memento to our vacation, some kind of local currency or local stamp or local military artifact, like a medal or something like that. And also, I mean, military includes naval, so you could have various maritime artifacts like small you know navigational tools or charting tools or I mean, even larger items like anchors, although I wouldn't start off with that because an anchor is huge and would cost a lot to store. But my point is that, obviously online, that's a difficult because when you try to sell it online, you're competing against the whole world, basically. I mean, all of the online commerce. So it's very difficult to set yourself apart in an online marketplace, um, because anybody from anywhere in the world essentially can, or at least anywhere in the Western world, can set up a similar operation. I mean, I would still be differentiated in the fact that I would have, you know, my inventory would be more from my region, so I'd be mostly competing against people who also bought inventory from my region, as far as I said, economic and military artifacts. But like I said, when you get into the in-person, flea market style stalls, then you're competing against, basically in a stall situation, you're more or less competing against the other people in the stalls and, the general local shopkeepers. So if you're the only one at a flea market who's offering economic and military artifacts, then you're differentiated to the point where, if you have customers who that's what their demand is for, economic, military, naval style artifacts, you might be the only supplier that day at that location. And another advantage of antiques and historically relevant artifacts is, typically, I mean, yes, obviously, like any economic situation, the price is going to fluctuate as far as, supply and demand and those economic factors. But over time, typically the price of the value of the inventory should increase, at least along the lines of inflation and maybe even greater depending on, the supply and demand of the economic factors, which obviously, as far as a shop is a pretty good feature to have because, that way if, even though you may not sell it immediately, I mean, like, for example, think if you have like a clothing shop and, you're dealing with seasonal fashion trends. I mean, the reality of clothing is, especially in the West, like, when things go out of fashion or as things get older, you have to discount those items significantly. So, if you don't sell the new fashion that you've purchased, your value of inventory is going to go down tremendously. Similar thing with like cars or, um, you know, uh, things like appliances. I mean, if you sell appliances, a brand new 2022 fridge is going to be worth much more than a 2015 fridge. So what I'm trying to say is that the depreciation factor of antiques and collectibles is almost non-existent, and really it has more of an appreciation in the sense that I mean, when you think of an antique or collectible from a certain period, I mean, that's a limited supply, right? So I mean, once that period passes, there can be no more items from that era because its time period has passed. So the supply is constrained by the fact that there's only so much supply as the era produced. And then demand can fluctuate depending on consumer demand for the item, and obviously when you get really specific, I mean, there may only be a very small amount of people who have any demand at all. So when you get small populations determining demand, obviously prices can fluctuate dramatically. But the point is because the supply is constrained from the era, you're really only dealing with the demand side of the economic equation. And as long as you're patient, and you wait for the demand to be sufficient for a price that produces a profit, you know, you don't have to worry about writing off inventory as a loss. But there's also the reality that no matter what the constraint of the supply, if demand is zero, then it's worthless, right? I mean, if there's literally no demand at all for a piece of inventory, then it doesn't matter if it's the only piece of inventory in the world. It's not going to be worth anything. I don't know. That's just economic perspective, but I mean, and like I said, I like the idea of it because you know I'm not a very good employee. I mean, I've definitely been employed at various times in my life, but I don't do well with the servile nature of being an employee. I mean, you know, again, it's not that I can't follow direction. I just, you know, I don't. I mean, it just seems like it always comes down to, eventually there's a disagreement, and your position as an employee is that you have to listen to the agent of the employer, no matter more or less what they say, as long as they're not breaking the law. And I just don't like being in that situation. I mean, I think I could accept that situation if I entered into, a more apprentice-like position with, an antique shopkeeper, in the sense of, I knew where I was headed, and, I was building up my own inventory, and, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. But definitely, in most employment positions, sometimes there is no light at the end of the tunnel, and you're just indefinitely in, the employee servile position. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, operating your own sort of business of merchanting and antiques and collectibles, it's very independent. I mean, obviously, cash flows can be precarious depending on what your situation is, and that's why I think you'll find that most people who get into this activity of being a merchant of antiques and collectibles, usually they're retired and have some sort of baseline income from a pension or a 401k or Social Security, because obviously it helps if you have a dependable income to rely on, where if you have a bad year as far as cash flow, or if the environment is more of a buyer's market as opposed to a seller's market, you can withstand not making a profit in your business because you have your income to fall back on. And that is the ideal way to do it, is if you have solid income from pension or whatever, then you can operate in this field much better. And I mean, to be fair, my situation, I have a mental illness, so I do have Social Security disability insurance, so I have that kind of situation of a baseline income. But the problem is if I try to do this, if I have like a really good year, I mean, there are limits how much money you can earn, and remain in a situation of disability. So, I mean, that's kind of something I have to consider too. If I was seriously going to do this, if I have a year where I make a profit greater than, the limits set by Social Security, I would be at risk of losing, my baseline income. So, regardless, I mean, I don't know for sure if I'm going to do it. I mean, I think, there's quite a bit of risk. I mean, obviously, it could be that, I just end up with a bunch of useless junk and waste all my money on overhead and, buying inventory. And obviously, I don't have a lot of money. I just said I was on Social Security, so it's not like I have a lot of room to be, risking money in a way that, may not result in any profitable activity. So, I don't know. I mean, But then there's, there's other ways to, I don't know. The bottom line is I've got tons of time on my hands. And I would like to do something that's somewhat productive. And that's kind of why I'm trying the streaming thing, is because, I don't know. It's not really that productive. I mean, I can't seem to build any kind of audience. So, I would have to probably get more efficient with my content and, have more direct, I don't know, obviously like Twitch is more of a gaming streamer website. So most people who tune into that website are looking to watch video games. I play a couple video games, but I'm not very good. I mean, I'm not like terrible. I mean, I play World of Warcraft and Civilization 5. I haven't really got into Civ 6, but like I said, I'm not terrible. I mean, I can win Civ 5, on a higher difficulty level. World of Warcraft PvP. I mean, I don't do rated or anything, but for, low level unrated, I'm usually, consistently decent player. But again, I probably should try it and see what people think. But I don't play that often. I don't really like video games that much. I mean, they're good time sink sometimes, but and then again, there's not really the rest of the people, obviously the people who don't do video games are usually have much better personalities or looks than I do, and streaming's probably not going to be a way. I mean, obviously, the most easy way to make additional income is the gig economy. I mean, I do have the DoorDash app as a dasher. And that, that's a pretty consistent way of, you can make a few $100 to $1,000 or so a month pretty consistently. I mean, you do have to risk your vehicle and wear and tear on your vehicle, and you're on the road a lot, but it's pretty reliable that you're going to make income from it. So that's probably what I should focus more of my time on. And DoorDash isn't bad. I mean, it's like, it's pretty stress-free. I mean, it's like, especially if you only do one order at a time. I mean, you're just basically go to the restaurant, pick up the order, drop it off. I mean, a lot of people who use DoorDash, like, they don't even want to see it. They just like leave it on the door. And you just send a picture of it to them. And so, it's a pretty easy way to make money. But like I said, when you consider the wear and tear on your car, I mean, even using the IRS mileage method, it's not very, the hourly rate can be pretty low. I mean, typically, like, you might make $15 to $20 revenue, but, that's driving, $15 to $20 revenue per hour, but that's driving like 20 to 30 miles every hour. And, so once you take in the 50 cent or so deduction for mileage, you realize you're only making like $5 or $6 an hour. And like I said, it's variable. I mean, it's all dependent on how much the person wants to tip you. And so it's, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, when I did the calculations, it seemed like, you're barely making more than minimum wage, but but yeah, the DoorDash thing is definitely probably the most realistic way to make money if I don't want to be like an employee. I mean, obviously, you know, because I have my Social Security income, you know, I mean, first off, you know, I can only make $1,300 or so a month anyway. I mean, you know, you can find part-time like cleaning jobs, janitor jobs, but then you're back in the problem of, you know, you're kind of, well, you're an employee and you have to like, you know, follow schedules and orders, and I just don't really do well in that type of environment over the long run. So that's why the gig thing with DoorDash is appealing, because you know you can do it more or less whenever you want, and you know you can stop whenever you want. If you're having a bad day, you don't have to do it. Um, so that's what I mostly try to do. But right now, I'm not living in a area where you can DoorDash immediately in that area, so I have to travel, you know, at least 45 minutes to get to one of their, you know, areas. So but hopefully that'll be changing soon. We've been trying to move to a more urban area. But well, it's been nice chatting with you, viewer. I don't know if you could call it chatting. I mean, it's mostly just me talking, but it's exclusively just me talking. But